Hello, welcome to the GPP Chin Music Podcast. I'm Big Italy 42. He is Josh Shepardson at BChad50. And we've got a really fun slate tonight. We've got a lot of top options, a lot of top arms, a couple guys in great spots, a couple guys not in great spots, maybe a couple guys that you don't have faith in. I know there's a couple guys that I don't have a lot of faith in. And also a game in Coors Field with a 10.5 run total. FanDuel certainly priced these guys accordingly. And DraftKings not too far behind. Some pretty expensive guys there as well. So it's going to be an interesting night to see what type of exposure we see with these guys, because they are very, very expensive. And if you want to get some Coors bats with, say, Clayton Kershaw and FanDuel in your cash games, not going to happen. You can do it in some GPPs with some other guys, but it's going to be really tough tonight. So it's going to be fun to see. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of high ownership with really anyone on this slate.
No, it's weird. We've got all these top pitchers, and we've got the Coors Field game with the price hikes, and I really think it's going to wreak havoc on the ownership of some of these pitchers, because you're going to see some gamers go for your typical Kershaw build, where you build around your pitcher, and they'll pivot down to whatever their next preferred game is, one of the other high totals. But then I think you're also going to see some gamers go the exact opposite route and pay down for maybe a betting favorite like a Jesse Chavez and pay up for all these bats at Coors Field. And to be honest, I think that there's merit for both team builds, but it will definitely create some interesting ownership dynamics tonight, I believe.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun night. So starting off the top, Clayton Kershaw, minus 260 favorite, 6-run total. He's your top option. I don't think it's particularly close. I think you have the same thinking. So Clayton Kershaw is the guy you want in your cash games. There's plenty of values to figure that out, but obviously this is the GPP podcast. So with that being said, Clayton Kershaw is certainly in play in GPPs as well against a Texas team that really struggles against left-handed pitching. A lot of their best bats are left-handed. So Kershaw just in a tremendous spot tonight, and will not be surprised at all to see him be your top scorer and it not be particularly close tonight.
Yeah, I'm of the same thinking. I think it's a little bit easier to pivot off of him in GPPs, because there are some things you can do. Cash games, even though this isn't the Cash Games podcast, I'm not going any different direction on FanDuel anyway. And on DraftKings, you've got options with an SP2. The nice thing with DraftKings is I think you can still use Kershaw in your GPPs, because you can pair a cheaper second pitcher with him and still get some decent bat exposure. Not going to be great Coors Field bat exposure, but I think you can get some other guys in there. One of my favorite pitchers to pair with Kershaw on DraftKings, the guy that I'm going to be turning to the most in cash games and GPPs, is going to be Jesse Chavez at 6,800. He's my preferred SP2 with whoever I'm using as my SP1. $6,800. He's a betting favorite. He's facing a Padres offense that is bad against right-handed pitching, strikes out quite a bit with a 22% strikeout rate. Looks really good. I mean, he's at home. He's in a home run suppressing ballpark. A lot to like about Chavez. He's pitched really well this year. If you want to go a little bit off the wall, since we are talking GPP podcast, the name that I would dip down to would be $5,200 Jeff Locke. Big ground ball rate, should keep the ball in the yard at home run friendly US Cellular Field. $5,200 on FanDuel. So you do get that huge salary relief if you do want to go with the Kershaw, or if you go with one of these other secondary names like a Madison Bumgarner or David Price, weather permitting, of course. You're going to have some money for bats, and he's opposed by John Danks. You'd expect for some run support. He's not a huge betting favorite, but I expect the best bats in the Pirates offense to give him some run support, and the White Sox offense is I might have to invent a new word that's even more harsh than inept against left-handed pitching, because the White Sox have taken it to a whole new level this year. They are posting currently a 41 WRC plus and 234 WOBA against lefties this year. That's 22 points worse than the next worst team against left-handed pitching this year, the Brewers. So, I mean, they are so bad that even a guy like Jeff Locke has some merit tonight, I think.
Yeah, I'm with you there. A couple other guys I'm considering: Carlos Martinez. I like him a lot as a righty against Minnesota. It is in Minnesota, and that's a better offense at home than they are on the road, but certainly a guy that I'm looking at quite a bit. David Price, like you said, weather permitting, gotta like him against that depleted Reds lineup. He's in a fine spot. And one other guy, A tournament-only option. I feel like some people are going to play him in cash games. That's not a route I'm taking. But Drew Hutchison is a minus 190 favorite. He's really struggled with right-handed batters this year, though. 4.01 WOBA allowed. Been pretty tough on lefties. So, I mean, you're taking a big risk with him. But as we saw in that complete game, 8 strikeout, 0 earned run game against the White Sox, he has big-time upside. But his floor is there might not be a floor. His might be more like a basement for him. But either way. He's got. There's merit to him because he's got upside, and it's $6,200 on DraftKings. I think he's in a decent spot.
Yeah, I think so too. I want to throw one more name out there because there is a pitcher's duel that we didn't touch on yet at all. Obviously, we've stated that if the weather allows it, we like Price over Cueto at Cincinnati. In Seattle, I'm taking Bumgarner over Felix. Usually I won't hold one bad start against a pitcher like Felix's meltdown against the Astros last Friday, but he's got 2 meltdowns in his last 3 starts. I'm going to need to see a good start from him before I go ahead and roster him. Giants are good against right-handed pitching, so I like Bumgarner against a Seattle offense that, yes, Nelson Cruz is scary against lefties. Mark Trumbo is very good against left-handed pitching, but beyond that, there's not a lot of firepower in that offense. They do rank fairly well in WRC plus against lefties this year, but remember, Robinson Cano and Kyle Seager are both left-handed batters, and Madison Bumgarner really ties them up. Has a really low WOBA over the last couple of years, second lowest, trailing only Clayton Kershaw since 2012 against lefties on tonight's slate anyways. Don't know compared to the rest of the league. So really low WOBA, really tough on lefties. So I do like Bumgarner a little bit, even as an underdog on the road. But that's GPPs only, really.
Yeah, I'll throw one more GPP option. Chase Anderson has been tough on righties this year. He's got a decent price, especially on FanDuel at $5,900. We saw what Jeremy Hellickson did to this team last night. Had a great performance. So, with that being said, it's not to say that he's going to have a similar performance, but, Hellickson he did give up the 2 earned runs, but he had 6 Ks in 6 innings. This is still a team that's not great against right-handed pitching, and Chase Anderson has actually been really tough against righties this year. You look at his numbers among the starters for tonight, and he's one of the better ones. 281 WOBA allowed, just 1 home run. So I think he's a guy you can consider as well in a couple spots.
Yeah, really, he just needs to navigate that 2 through 4 spot in the Angels lineup. The Cole Calhoun, Mike Trout, Albert Pujols death trap, and if he gets through that, he doesn't even have to get through it unscathed. If they're the only guys that runs up against him and he can avoid that big Pujols blast, he should turn in at least a quality start, so I like that call.
Absolutely. As we move over to catcher, Matt Wieters gets Kevin Correa. Should be back in the lineup tonight. Got his day off yesterday with Caleb Joseph behind the dish. So all other options, Travis d'Arnaud, I really like tonight against Drew Hutchison, who has big-time struggles with righties. Looking that way. And then, of course, you've got all your Coors options. Willen Rosario kills lefties. You can play him at catcher. At catcher only on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he's the first baseman. But I like him. Then I really like Jonathan Lucroy. He's a guy I've been riding over the past couple days. Got a nice price tag, $2,700 on FanDuel, $3,900 on DraftKings. And he has multiple hits in 3 straight games. So you don't like the park shift to Kansas City from Miller Park. But what you do like is that it's a matchup against Joe Blanton, who you and I probably, well, not you necessarily, but you watching this can include yourself with me as not knowing that Joe Blanton was even in consideration to start a game this year. And I'm looking forward to picking on him.
Yeah, I think those are good options. I will add one price-conscious option who is a great choice if you're looking to roster Clayton Kershaw, and that's Yan Gomes, $3,400 on DraftKings. Minimum salary on FanDuel. I'm going to be starting all of my Clayton Kershaw rosters with Yan Gomes slotting in at catcher. I think it just makes too much sense. I think it's going to be a fairly popular move, and I'll reiterate what you'd already said. Coors guys are options. This is actually a place where you can get some affordable exposure to Coors Field. Castro, $4,000 on DraftKings, and he checks in at $3,000 on FanDuel. Rosario, $4,000 option on DraftKings. Really like him against Brett Oberholzer tonight. So those are some of your cheaper options if you're going to get Coors Field exposure. So catcher, not a bad place to do that. But Yan Gomes going to be paired with Clayton Kershaw on a lot of rosters for me tonight.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. Due to all those factors, the splits, all those things, I think he'll probably be in my cash game lineup with Kershaw as well. First base options, I love Paul Goldschmidt against 50% fly ball rate, Hector Santiago at home, but you got to pay a pretty penny for him. 5,800 on DraftKings, 59 on FanDuel, but that should drive his ownership very low, especially due to the fact that there's so many games on the slate tonight. So gotta like him. Jose Abreu gets a lefty at home, and Jeff Locke. Yes, he does keep the ball on the ground well, but I think he could go under owned tonight because people will be looking at Jeff Locke as a secondary option tonight. And then one of my favorite plays, Mark Teixeira against Jose Urena, 4,900 on DraftKings, $3,700 on FanDuel. Gotta like him. He's going to be batting lefty at home in that short porch in Yankee Stadium.
I'm pretty excited about Lucas Duda tonight. Gets a break from Citi Field and gets to go to Rogers Center, which is an absolute hitter's paradise. $3,800 on DraftKings, just $3,400 on FanDuel. The park factor shift is a huge one for him. And Hutchison, though he's been tougher on lefties this year than righties, last year it was the exact opposite. I think we've got a pitcher that we're still seeing some stabilization from his splits, so I'm not ready to say that he's out of the woods against lefties just yet. So I really like Lucas Duda's price point. Love him in GPPs because you always like Duda's power, his ability to reach the seats. So I'm a big fan of Duda. I also like on the cheaper spectrum of things, Eric Hosmer. Don't like the fact that he's away from Miller Park and he's back home again, but Mike Fiers, not the most imposing matchup on a day where we've got a lot of really good pitching options. $3,100 on FanDuel and $3,800 on DraftKings, so you can get some salary relief with him. And then the bargain bin, we're going to look at Mike Napoli against Alex Wood. Napoli crushes left-handed pitching. This, of course, assuming that David Ortiz does not get a start at first base because they are in a National League ballpark. I don't suspect that will be the case. Tonight would be the least likely night for him to get that start anyways because they are facing a lefty and Ortiz has been lost against them. But you will have to double-check the rosters just to make sure that Napoli's in. Anytime the Red Sox go to a National League park, you're going to have to make sure that it is Napoli at first and not Ortiz. But $2,700 on FanDuel, $3,300 on DraftKings. And anytime it's a Clayton Kershaw day, you need to know who some of these cheaper bats are. And the last name that I'll throw out that's first base eligible on DraftKings is $3,300 Mark Trumbo. You don't love the matchup with Bumgarner, but you love Trumbo against left-handed pitching. So that's the last name that I'm going to throw out at first base.
Yeah, that's a good point. I had missed him at first base on DraftKings, but I love the Napoli call. I'm all over Napoli. He's a guy I'm considering cash games as well tonight in that matchup. Second base, the Jimmy Paredes show, especially on FanDuel, once again, $2,500. 4K on DraftKings isn't a bad price either because it does have a nice lineup spot. If you're looking DraftKings, Luis Valbuena, $4,000 should be a pretty popular play. He's third base only on FanDuel, but hit 2 homers off a lefty. Now he gets a righty who's terrible against lefties, so you do the math there. In Coors Field, he's in a great spot tonight as well. A couple other guys to consider. D. Gordon, if you want to go GPP against Michael Pineda. Pineda, if he doesn't have it going, there's really no in between with him. He's either dominant or awful. So if you want to chase that, I don't blame you. And I really like Ben Zobrist against Dresser de Spain today. He's got a great price as well.
Yeah, I really like the Zobrist call. I think people will chase this guy's performance from last night, but Derek Dietrich doesn't look bad as a salary relief option. $2,400 on FanDuel. And he checks in as a $3,300 option on FanDuel, where I like him a little bit more because he is so super cheap there. He had a favorable lineup spot last night. I believe he hit second. I'm going to pull that up right now just to confirm, but he gets a nice park shift. Oh, yep, he did hit second. Gets a nice park shift away from playing at home in Miami to hitting with that short porch in right field at Yankee Stadium. So if you're looking for a little bit of salary relief, $3,300 Derek Dietrich is at least an intriguing option on FanDuel because Jimmy Paredes is just $100 more on DraftKings, or I'm sorry, on FanDuel. The line gets a little bit more blurred there. I'm more willing to spend on Paredes, but when you can save $700 on DraftKings, it does become at least a consideration.
Yeah, and it's going to be a nice GPP swerve off of Paredes, who's certainly going to be pretty popular once again tonight. So, also at DraftKings, this is first base and second base eligibility at DraftKings. Should be in the lineup. Sean Rodriguez had himself a nice game last night. He's shortstop eligible, men's salary on FanDuel, so keep that in mind. But that's about as cheap as I'm going at second. Anybody else you like at second?
No, I mean, you can use Chase Utley if you think that Ubaldo Jimenez is going to get messy. Decent home run park factor at home in Philadelphia, so I don't hate that play, but I just think that there are other options around the price point that I like a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely. And third base here, a lot of good options here. On DraftKings, you can play Miguel Cabrera against Johnny Cueto. Obviously, you don't like the matchup, but Miguel Cabrera still, he's on fire right now. He's absolutely crushing the ball. Manny Machado, though, going to be a popular play once again. Price didn't even go up on FanDuel at all. $3,500 still, which is baffling to me. Josh Donaldson is your fifth most expensive third baseman on DraftKings against the lefty and John Neese at the Rogers Center. Gotta love him, but if you're not going with him, go with his teammate, like I always do, Mr. Danny V, Danny Valencia, $3,000 on DraftKings, $26 on FanDuel. He's in a great spot as well against the same exact lefty.
Yeah, interesting bind for gamers on DraftKings. You've got Josh Donaldson and Nolan Arenado at the same price point, both facing left-handed pitchers, both in hitter-friendly environments, both with great lineup spots. You can't go wrong with either if you're going to pay down at pitcher and pay up at the hot corner, but I like Valencia. As you say, he's cheap exposure to a lefty at the Rogers Center, so you're getting all of the great things that you get with Donaldson. Obviously, he's not the same hitter that Donaldson is, but he is well above average hitter against lefties, does hit in a typically favorable lineup spot. Fifth is a popular spot for him oftentimes. Occasionally he'll hit sixth. Either way, he should be hitting behind some on-base machines in that loaded Blue Jays lineup that just absolutely hammers the ball against lefties. So Valencia is one of my favorite plays. I'll throw out another name if you're a little bit worried about Valencia getting lifted for a pinch hitter late, which as a platoon hitter, that's always a threat. You've got Pablo Sandoval at 3,800. It's a lefty-lefty matchup because he's abandoning switch hitting. So I don't love it, but I think you're going to see some ownership for him. The guy that I actually like more at the same price point on FanDuel, and this is actually where I was initially going with this, is $2,600 Mike Moustakas. Does not get to hit at Miller Park anymore because he is back home, but he continues to have that sweet lineup spot. Only $3,600 on DraftKings, so I'm looking at Moustakas a little bit. Again, it's a Clayton Kershaw day. You're going to hear me say it over and over again in the podcast. You got to find some salary relief someplace. Grab a number two hitter that's really cheap at the hot corner in a lineup that does very well against right-handed pitching. Mike Moustakas looks pretty good to me.
Yeah, and I'll throw out one more GPP option. At home at Great American Ballpark against the lefty. A good lefty, though, David Price. But Todd Frazier, a ton of power. $4,600 on DraftKings. Really expensive, though, on FanDuel. Going to be tough to fit him in. He is he's sitting there at $4,500. So going to be a tough guy to fit in either way, but he's got some major upside here. Shortstop, Troy Tulowitzki.
It's good.
It's just Troy Tulowitzki. I mean, if you can afford him, that's who you want. He's got a lefty at home. Been hitting well again. Not great over the past week or so, but he's shown the flashes of what he can do. And Carlos Correa, only $200 less than him on DraftKings. I can't imagine outside of just trying to be contrarian why you would pay for him instead. I mean, it's a fine spot for him, but Tulo obviously has been doing this for quite some time. So Tulo's the guy that I want if I'm choosing between those two. But you also consider Jose Reyes, of course. Like we said, Toronto's in a great spot against John Neese. He's expensive, but once again, if I'm paying up, it's going to be Troy Tulowitzki. I'm not going to save a little bit of money and get one of these other guys. If I'm paying all the way up and I'm not punting the position completely, it's Troy Tulowitzki all day long.
Yeah, you either pay up for Troy Tulowitzki or you pay down and you avoid that entire middle tier. I'm not grabbing middle tier. Another name that I'll throw out there, and I guess maybe he does technically fall in the middle tier, but if you're saving $1,800 on FanDuel, I'd say that's a substantial savings. You're saving $1,200 on DraftKings, $3,800 on DraftKings, $2,900 on FanDuel. Cleanup hitter for the Pittsburgh Pirates, Jung Ho Kang. He settled in nicely at that lineup spot. They're in an American League ballpark, so you damn well better believe that he's going to be in the lineup. No threat of him getting the seat with the designated hitter tonight. I just don't see any way that he's not playing, especially now that they've had the confidence to move him into the cleanup spot. You don't usually see teams lift their cleanup hitter, so I like Gong a lot against Danks, who's absolutely dreadful against right-handed hitters, and he gets a nice park shift. Not used to hitting in hitter-friendly environments, and U.S. Cellular Park, one of the more homer-friendly venues in the league. Gonna be a nice vacation of sorts away from PNC Park in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely love that call. And I think that's about, like you said, too low, then you drop down. That's about where you drop to. If not, you go even cheaper.
Yep.
And one guy I really like, especially FanDuel, Francisco Lindor, batted second yesterday. Just recently called up, so he had 7 at-bats, but gets the Oshiwada today. Batted second. I assume he'll bat second again. He's 2,300 on FanDuel, 36 on DraftKings. He's the guy that I'll probably be slotting into my to my cash games on FanDuel tonight. But I think he's a great tournament option as well because he can steal bases and the guy can kind of do it all. You got to like that lineup spot. Not often you find a shortstop in the great lineup spot like that.
Exactly.
Other options: J.J. Hardy in play again against Kevin Correa. Men's salary on FanDuel $3,300 on DraftKings. But I'll also throw out Xander Bogaerts. Gets Alex Wood today. Nice price tag on both sites as well.
Yep, and he's another guy that's been hitting with a favorable lineup spot of late. So gotta love that when you can get that from a middle infielder because there aren't many that have great lineup spots.
Yeah, definitely. And as we look to the outfield, if you're gonna pay all the way up, for me it's gonna be Bryce Harper against Matt Andriese, 5,700 on DraftKings, 54 on FanDuel. He's nice and expensive, but gotta love him. Mike Trout's not in a great spot. Chase Anderson has been tough on righties. Obviously, Mike Trout trumps any matchup, but for me, Harper's the guy I'm paying up for in GPPs. Other options, you mentioned loving Starling Marte. He's been on fire recently, $5,200. I mean, 18, 22, 11, 11, 11, 10, and 14, and then a 0, and then another 14 in his last 9 games on DraftKings. I mean, you see his price. He's not a sexy name, but he's a guy that's really been getting it done. And then directly below him, Joey Bats, Mr. 2 home runs or 0 home runs over the past 9 games. $5,100 gets John Neese. Once again, Blue Jays.
Yeah, and speaking of Marte, I like his teammate Andrew McCutchen quite a bit. I did it yesterday, and I might go back to the well again today. And that's a nice little 2 through 4 mini stack of Marte, McCutchen, and Gong. With Gong coming in fairly affordably, you stick a couple punts in there, you can still get one of these better pitchers with them. You're going to have a stack or mini stack that's probably very low owned. The total of 8 at U.S. Cellular Field is lower than some of the other totals on the board, but maybe get those guys going. They all got on base a few times last night. Marte stole a couple bases. They all have that power speed combination that you're looking for. And again, John Danks is bad against right-handed batters. So if you can get any of them at U.S. Cellular Field, especially guys with the hitting prowess of McCutchen and Marte, that's long established against lefties. Gong obviously new to the big league, so we don't have a huge track record for him, but he has hit left-handed pitching well so far. So I like McCutchen. I like Marte. You and I are always on Brett Gardner against any right-handed pitcher, especially at home. So that doesn't really change tonight. On DraftKings, I like him a lot more than on FanDuel because of the price point difference. But A.J. Pollock, a lefty at home, hitting leadoff for the club lately. Gotta like Pollock a little bit. And then there's a number of bargain options that we've been looking at. One of my favorites, assuming he's in the lineup and he should be DHing, at least on FanDuel, not in the DraftKings player pool, prospect Kyle Schwarber is a min-salary option who gets Sean Markham. Markham is one of the lesser pitchers on the slate. Give me a min-salary outfielder with plus power and really discerning eye. Had a walk rate of north of 17%, I believe, at the AA level. So Schwarber's a real nifty option. With the Indians facing a lefty, you can always count on Ryan Rayburn getting a favorable lineup spot, typically cleanup. So I like him as salary relief as well. And then assuming he's hitting in a nice lineup spot again, perhaps second, we'll have to see what the Orioles lineup looks like tonight. But if Travis Snyder's in the lineup, you and I used him last night, I'll be right back on him again tonight against Kevin Correa. Correa, don't be fooled by his one passable start so far this year. This is a guy who really isn't a big league caliber pitcher anymore. And I say anymore very lightly. There really wasn't a very long period of time, maybe like a 2-start stretch at some point in the year 2003, something like that. He was a serviceable big leaguer.
That
but
one day.
All seriousness, all silliness aside, Kevin Correa, not a big league caliber pitcher, and you're going to want to go back to that Orioles well again tonight and pick on this team. I mean, who knows? Maybe you'll get some more Frenchie action on the mound.
Yeah, that would be nice. And I'll throw out another tournament option here. Hasn't been particularly great over his past couple games, but Yasiel Puig gets Wandy Rodriguez. Always seems to go really under-owned, especially even in Dodger stacks. I mean, you see all these other guys. Everyone wants Ethier because he's cheap. Everyone wants Aegon. Everybody plays Jimmy Rollins because he's cheap, but Puig kind of goes under the radar. And then I've got your FanDuel special of the day. The guy, yes, he's in a tough matchup, but this price is absolute insanity with him facing a left-handed pitcher. It is Madison Bumgarner, but Nelson Cruz is $3,300 tonight on FanDuel. The type of numbers that he's posting, I mean, he's the best hitter in the world against left-handed pitching this season. And, I mean, yeah, it's Madison Bumgarner and it's in Safeco Field, but it really doesn't matter to me with Nelson Cruz. If I'm playing him in a tournament, any left-handed pitcher, I'll play him against in a tournament. And that price at $4,200 on DraftKings isn't too bad either. So that's my special for the day, the cheap guy to look for.
And I like that call quite a bit. Again, I like Bumgarner tonight, but if you're on teams you're not using him, take advantage of some of the salary relief that you're getting, namely at DraftKings. Obviously, the price point on FanDuel is a steal. They don't tend to slide their pay scale or their salary scale according to matchup like DraftKings does, but DraftKings dropped his price point, dropped that at Trumbo. You see it all the time when there's a tough pitcher on the hill. Even these elite bats get their price point dropped. Take advantage of that and hope that Cruz gets into one on your rosters that you don't have Madison Bumgarner.
Yep. One last guy I'm going to throw out there, Preston Tucker. He's $3,300. You want some cheap exposure to Coors Field. He's $3,300 on FanDuel and $4,100 on DraftKings. It's not a great value there, but gives you some cheap exposure. Usually gets a nice lineup spot. And as we know, Kyle Kendrick is terrible against left-handed batters. And then I'll throw out one more guy. Minimum salary on FanDuel. You assume he's going to probably bat eighth, though, if he's in lineup. Jacob Morrisnick against Kyle Kendrick as well.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to want some cheap exposure to Coors Field, so some of these guys are going to be normally wouldn't be on your radar. Grab them, get that exposure on the cheap so that you can roster a guy like Clayton Kershaw or David Price, because simply put, you can't get all these high-end bats at Coors Field or any of them if you're going to be using Kershaw, but you can definitely pillage some of these cheaper options from the village of Coors Field.
Yeah, and I like that call. I mean, you got to get your cheap exposure where you can, so I think those are some good ways to do it. And with that, that's going to wrap things up. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We've got a lineup optimizer, cheat sheets, a lot of great new content on our website at dailyfantasycafe.com. So check that out, and we'll see you guys next time.